Comic book toys have never exactly been perfect, but why so bad with Captain Marvel? And what's it say about comic book toys as a whole?
Hey there, this is Perch, talking Captain Marvel merchandise. And no, this isn't a video where I'm gonna show legs and things getting ripped in half off of the toy or any of that kind of stuff. No, I don't have anything against the Captain Marvel toys, other than some of them have the worst face sculpts of all time. I mean, the character looks nothing like Captain Marvel, and I'm not talking like, oh, hey, she's got to look a certain way for me. No, I'm talking like she vaguely resembles Brie Larson, which I think is the goal. If you're making a Captain Marvel toy based on the Captain Marvel movie, then the character should look more like Brie Larson and less like Professor X with a wig on. And that's exactly, not only is that what it looks like, that is exactly what it actually is, in the sense that this toy actually, I'm using the word actually a lot because people miss this part. This toy used the head of Professor X, like the literal sculpted head. And then they put kind of a blonde wig on it that I guarantee you was taken from some other toy, some other hair sculpt that they just kind of run this plastic in blonde, and then they churned out a bunch of them, slapped it on the Professor X head, and that was our toy. This is not like, this isn't me saying this is what it looks like. It does look like that, but this is actually what it is. You can go online and you can see some people have dissected the toy. Now these are people with too much time on their hands, but that's fine. They've taken the wig off and they've looked at the head, and nope, that is exactly the Professor S sculpt. Anyway, the point about Captain Marvel is it's gotten, there's so much emotion has gone into Captain Marvel, and it's become a topic, like many topics do, where it's almost too toxic to talk about. You can, no matter what you say, no matter what opinion you put forward, either you're going to get a response of yeah, let's screw Captain Marvel, or you're going to get the other side of Captain Marvel's not for you, you jerk. You're going to get one of those two directions going pretty hard either way. And the problem is that most topics need a level of kind of insight and nuance between those two points of view. Like, not one or the other. It needs to be kind of, okay, this is crazy, or this is not. I mean, that's what it needs. So I said this before the Captain Marvel movie. I said this movie is getting marketed very, very strangely. And now here's the point where the movie makes $1 billion, and I can say, well, I was wrong. It was marketed just fine because clearly people showed up to the movie theater, and that is true. It's a true fact. I'm not throwing any shade at Captain Marvel's money making ability. It made a lot of money. It did well. Anyone who's sitting here grousing like, that Disney just falsely propped up that film with fake ticket sales. No, the movie made a lot of money. It's time for you to kind of suck it up, and you're just gonna have to admit it. It made a lot of money and people went to see it. But that doesn't mean the marketing wasn't weird. And specifically, this is why I say it was weird. Um, Captain Marvel was billed as kind of a lot of things all at once. The first trailer came out, it was very odd in terms of how it was promoting, and then they did a very abrupt shift in the second trailer, which was better, which then did a better job of showing the character. I would call the second trailer the Black Panther trailer. So the first Black Panther trailer was near kind of spot on brilliant. It did a good job of showing the world, the characters, the uniqueness, the action. It kind of hit all the notes and kind of gave you the sense that you were going to see a pretty big epic film. And the first trailer of Captain Marvel had a kind of a very odd collection of what looked like clips that somebody kind of crammed together, and had the odd beat up the old lady on the bus scene, and it came off puzzling. It seemed more narrow. In fact, from the very beginning, from the blockbuster video kind of environment, it seemed like it was showing a smaller world, not a bigger world. And in the second trailer, they came out and they showed the bigger world, and they showed more of kind of the heroism, and you got to see Captain Marvel doing some things, and they kind of recovered, and they went with more of a classic trailer, and that was smart, I think, for them to do. But the odd part is, if you look at Black Panther and compare it to how that film did, in the stores, in the Targets and the Walmarts and everything else, they have plenty of Black Panther toys. They had Black Panther costumes, little Black Panther claw, lots of Black Panther stuff, lots of stuff that is clearly for kids, marketed for kids. You get to be the Black Panther, live in the Black Panther world. And with Captain Marvel, you saw the same kind of toy merchandise come out. It's what Disney's good at. And that toy merchandise, though, is was very all over the map. So for one, Black Panther is easy, of course. It's a fairly simple mask sculpt over the head for the toys. So it's hard to have a lot of variety there. So in that sense, Black Panther had it easier. But Captain Marvel, if you looked at the toys, there was everything. There was one that looked like a Barbie head sculpt, and then there was one that was more action figure. There's one I mentioned before. It was basically Professor X in a wig. There's a million different variants, and it seemed like they just took out the merchandise gun and then just blasted it all over the place. There was big toys, small toys, toys of her in an army costume, toys of her in her old costume, new costume, helmet on, sometimes big hair, sometimes short hair, just a lot of just everything. And it didn't, I think if you're in terms of marketing, that's why I say marketing was weird. If you're marketing toward a kid, if you're trying to aim a property at a kid, then consistency helps. And especially if it's a new property, and Captain Marvel is a new property to the vast majority of people. Certainly, the comic readers, Carol Corps, all the rest. There are people who know Captain Marvel, but that's not the majority of people out there. So very odd. And then you had cats. You had the cat with the exploding mouth, and then you just had a cat that was kind of a replica of the Chinese clock, where one paw would move up and down. And it was a very convoluted mess of toys. And if you looking at all that, you ask yourself, who is this movie for? And when the critics kind of really went hard at Captain Marvel, then we heard who the movie is for: young girls, to inspire them. Okay, that's fine, except then what are we like? What is all this merchandise? It's very like it was a very confusing mess of stuff. And unfortunately, like I mentioned before, in these topics, if you question, if you're like, what the hell is this? You get it's not for you, shut up, or, aha, let's rip it in half kind of reaction, depending on which audience is listening to you. And it's a legitimate question. I think I say this from the standpoint of, I like comics. I want comics to survive. I have a vested interest in comics and comic properties pulling in new audiences. I'm one of those people. Actually, I am on their side. I am on the side of the group that's saying, hey, these comics are for this new audience. Awesome. This is good news for me. You're going to be putting comics to a brand new audience of buyers. This is great. This will help us sustain more comics. This is going to broaden the people who will be coming into the shop and selling more books. I love this idea. Let's more comics for everyone. Yes, please. All on board. But then we got to talk about those audiences then without a lot of hysteria and a lot of emotion. And that's the problem with this whole dialogue is a lot of people, when they say, oh, it's for a new audience, or it's not for you, what they're really saying is, shut up. Don't talk anymore about this. They don't want to talk about this new audience. They don't want to kind of discuss ideas of how to market to this group or what to do with this group. What they really want you to do is just shut up, consume, and stop complaining about things. It's that's it. And that's, unfortunately, that doesn't work, because for anyone who loves comics and wants comics to grow, you do have an interest in this new audience. You're like, well, tell me more. How are we going to attract this new audience? What does this new audience mean to me if we have all these new readers coming into comics, or how the makeup of comics change? And on it goes. I think that's the thing that we've got to figure out as people is, we do need to broaden the audience. It's in our best interest, no matter what kind of comic fan you are. Let's say you're the comic fan who's your peak comic is Evil Ernie and Lady Death, and you wish they would just have more of those, and that's what you need for comics. Great. Well, then you have an interest in pulling in this new audience, because the stronger comics are, the more likely people are going to put in money to comics. People are going to make new comics. There's going to be comics available for you on the shelf. The smaller the audience gets, the more the business contracts, the less likely you are to get what you want. So we want this audience to expand. So when we look at Captain Marvel and we look at a movie that made a lot of money, um, and you look at the merchandise and you look at the toys and you look at the marketing, there are some weird bits to Captain Marvel in just how it was produced. I'm not saying this is like I hate Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel has become, for whatever reason, very, very polarizing. Well, it's not for whatever reason. It's because this argument became peak fight around Captain Marvel. And I also think there's some oddity to why Captain Marvel became the one everyone rallied around. Wonder Woman, that was out 1 or 2 years earlier, 1.5 years earlier. Wonder Woman didn't have the same fight. There was a bit of it, and it felt like some of the news sites were kind of stirring things up. I remember Bleeding Cool put out an article saying, "Hey, there's in theaters in San Francisco, they're not going to sell any tickets to men for Wonder Woman for opening weekend because the women need to see this first." And when you really dug into that article, you found that no, that wasn't actually a true thing that was happening. That was like somebody's kind of jokey statement that somebody on that site disingenuously decided to run and create a whole article around, but it wasn't really accurate. And if you just kind of sit and think for a minute, of course it's not accurate. Movie theaters want to make money, so their goal is to get people into the theater. And there just wasn't a case where there's just, oh, there are all these women that wanted to go see Wonder Woman, but damn it, the boy nerds got there first. Um, Maybe if you're talking like some theater in the Midwest where there's like two screens available for Wonder Woman, and that's the only theater for like 200 miles, yeah, maybe it sells out. But San Francisco, where Wonder Woman was showing in, I don't know, 100 screens within a 10-mile radius, yeah, no, they're that's not happening. So I mean, but it seemed like with Wonder Woman, they're trying to get this little fight started between people around this movie is for these people and not for these people and not for you trolls. But it didn't feel like a lot of people really grabbed on. I think Wonder Woman came out and it just turned out to be a pretty damn good movie. It did its thing. It had its problems with the third act, like almost every superhero movie does. But Wonder Woman's run through no man's land and kind of that whole scene was powerful and it was shot really well and it was a good film. And so it seemed like when Captain Marvel came around, there was this desire to kind of let's see if we can get this thing going again. Let's see if we can get a fight really stirred up again. And so there was a lot of comments, some by the actress herself, who for whatever reason wanted to kind of stir the pot around. This is a female empowerment film, which I would have just loved at some point during the whole parade of Captain Marvel if Gail Gadot or Patty Jenkins or somebody from DC would have been like, hey, we had the big first female movie a year and a half ago. Wonder Woman did fine, so let's cut it with this is the first female superhero movie. Let's just cut that out. You stupid people. I would have loved for just so a little bit of turf war there. I mean, Marvel was definitely infringing on DC's turf there, and DC just kind of took it. But I think that uh, there was this desire to get the fight going with Captain Marvel, and great. Now we've had our fight. The news sites have gotten their clicks, and some people have put little avatars and little Captain Marvel symbols in their Twitter handles and all the rest. Great, you got all that. So what have we gained? Have we gained readership with the comics? Are the toys flying off the shelves? Do we see girls running around everywhere with Captain Marvel costumes on? We aren't. We maybe this Halloween we'll see a ton of Captain Marvel costumes. Who knows? I mean, my guess is we're going to see a lot more Black Widow and Wasp costumes because those characters seem at least in my area seem a lot more appealing to little girls. But maybe you go by the Disney store and you see these Captain Marvel jackets priced at like $80 a pop. I don't know that there's going to be a ton of little girls running around in those. Maybe. I mean, it could happen. I was wrong about I thought that Captain Marvel would do well. I said so before it released. I said it will do just fine for a Marvel movie. I predicted it about 150 million less than it made. Still predicting it very high, but it had legs and it did well. But as a property, whenever these fights stir up around who is this movie for, or where is it aimed for, or all the rest, the people who profit off of it is rarely the character or the movie. It just creates this kind of toxic sludge that kind of spins everything up, and then eventually that toxic sludge moves on to the next property to go kind of complain about or praise or fight over, and the one is left, the original property is kind of left behind out in the cold with nothing. And I think that Captain Marvel, if the goal is to get it into the minds of girls, to really empower and get little girls excited about superheroes and you can do it, and yes, ultimately comics and characters, then there's still a lot of work to be done because it's not hitting that mark. You go to the Walmarts and Targets, and there are boxes and boxes and boxes of Captain Marvel toys. They are not selling. You go to the Disney store, tons of Captain Marvel toys. They're not selling. So what do you do? How are you going to hook those kids? I mean, it feels like come Halloween time, the girls are going to be more interested in dressing up like Anna and Elsa because Frozen 2 is going to be on the horizon. That's what it feels like. But who knows? Weird things have happened. But so this is kind of long and rambling for sure. I'm just trying to get my arms around these properties and things like Captain Marvel. And I want us to get to a place where we can actually talk about these properties. We can talk about Captain Marvel. We can say, how's it working? How's it not working? Because there are some parts that are not working. I mean, when you go to the toy store and you see shelves of toys, something is not working. So what is it? And how do we fix that? And I'm saying it legitimately. How do we fix it? Because I would like it fixed. And I think by and large, definitely there's some exceptions, but by and large, if you talk to any comic book fan, most of them, most of us, I should say, we want it fixed. We want Captain Marvel toys flying off the shelves. I I want that. Again, like I said earlier, it's more people interested in comics. It's growing this field. That's a good thing. So that's where my motivation lies. How do we get this stuff moving? And I'd like to get away from the conversation of just this sappy internet conversations around if these people are misogynists who are talking. No, misogyny has nothing to do with it. At least not nothing to do with what I'm saying. It has to do. Well, all I'm saying is how do we get these things to sell? That's what I'm saying. That's my motivation. But what do you think? Why do these toys not sell? What's missing? What's preventing this stuff from hitting its target? Let me know. What do you think? Leave a comment. Um, like, subscribe, notify, follow, all that stuff. Comic Perch at Twitter. And thank you for listening.